from SOS Chai, and she's joining us from Caen in northern France. I'm Amber, and I'm your host for today. I am the founder and CEO of Donate for Refugees, that's hosting these fortnightly live broadcasts. And we're here really just to find out directly from the people who are working with refugees on the ground what's happening across Europe. So welcome, Chrissy. It's really nice to have you here today.
Nice to be here.
So perhaps you can start today just by explaining a little bit about yourself and how yourself and Jared started SOS Chai and how you got involved.
Okay. Well, we've been in France now about 12 years, but I get a bit muddled up with how many years ago and all the rest of it. But I think we've been doing SOS Chai in Caen for about 4 years. But about a year before that, we had a friend who came over who was really keen to go up and help in Calais. And she had made friends with some people that were serving tea up there, and they had to close their tea tent. So Jared, my husband, came up with this idea of finding her a van, and they found this ambulance that we converted into a tea truck, and they took it up there and did about a year, I think, of helping up in the jungle in Calais. But when all that started to dismantle, we had to think again, and it became very clear that a lot of the boys that were up there were making their way down the coast, and more and more guys here, because Ouistreham is a port, the port of Caen, and we have ferries backwards and forwards to England. So it was at Easter, actually, about 4 years ago. It was Easter, I think, and we decided, we run an international church as well, and we decided, you know what, we'd love to do something different this Easter. Let's go and do something just to bless some people. So we took our ambulance that was a bit redundant by that point, sitting on the drive, and we took it down to the Presqu'île of Caen, which is just a piece of land, a strip that comes up from the coast into the city of Caen port. And we went with a big hot dinner, but we thought probably only had enough to feed 20, 30. We didn't think we'd get more than that. And we just parked the van up by an old warehouse where we knew we'd seen some Sudanese living there. And we must have we kind of just kept having tins of food, and we must have fed that for that night, 90 or something. It was just a constant stream. And we had so much fun with them and such a lovely time, and we really connected. And I think at the end of the evening, we just kind of all looked to each other and said, well, this can't stop. These guys really need us. And so we started turning up and start off with weekly and then more frequently. And it's been a journey since then, really, over the last 4 years of building what is now SOS Chai. I think we've massively been blessed and increased and grown as people just through hanging out with these wonderful people and these strong people. And but it's part of what we do here, but it's a big part, and it's definitely an incredible part of what we do. We love it, and we have international visitors who come and help us as well from all over the world now. So we have a good volunteer team base.
Which is amazing. And of course, I was across a couple of years ago and had the pleasure of meeting with you and Jared and seeing the very red van that you use. And I hope at some point to be back and be able to catch up with you again, maybe even volunteer with you for a little while this time. So can you explain, kind of try and bring to life for us what it's like in Ouistreham for these people? How many people are there? Why they're kind of in that area, how long they stay there for, what the conditions are like?
So, there's in Ouistreham, the port, it's mainly Sudanese boys, and there's probably about 80 of them or so that are living by the riverbank there in the bushes, and built themselves a camp. And they are they're amazing boys, but they are desperate to get to England. That's their thing. And there are some amazing volunteers down there, local people that rock up, I think, nearly every night, or at least 5 times out of 7 in a week, with fresh water, with food, with provisions. They've got a medical van. They copied our idea and they bought themselves an old ambulance and turned it into a medical ambulance to give the boys treatment. And there's 2 nurses that turn up, the staff, and so they've got quite a community going there. But we are trying to support them with things that they can't do, like these boys desperately need shoes and clothing. So we're building friendship with that network down there and trying to support them. Camping equipment, they have a limited amount they can get together. So one of the things I like to try and do is to do a bit of grant funding applications around different places and try and raise money. And so we support them with things that they can't provide. So that's Ouistreham, but that's mainly Sudanese boys. And I'd reckon on any given time there's about 100 there, and they are still getting across. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, everybody's like, how can they possibly get across with all the restrictions at the moment on travel? But they do, and clever boys. But up here in Caen, we have a real mix from all over the world, actually. We've got a whole African community here from lots of different African nations. Obviously, quite a few French-speaking African nations choose to come to France. At the moment, the biggest stream I've seen coming through are from Afghanistan, and pretty regular and really growing. And they are young men who are absolutely desperate for asylum and desperate to find safety for their families as well, because the situation is deteriorating in Afghanistan. But we also have Venezuelans and just all over, actually. I mean, so many different countries, so many different nationalities rather represented here. Hard to put a figure on how many. I was actually thought I should know this, so I did a quick bit of research on Google this morning, but I couldn't think that was, they're all several years old, and to be honest, they're all pretty random. So I would say probably nobody really knows. We had quite a few big squats in Caen that have, I think you'll know a few months ago there was a whole thing going on with Priti Patel and the government in France, and one of the moves over here was that they shut down all the squats, very sadly. So people got shipped off into different places or just legged it and went elsewhere. So, and that has deteriorated a bit in that we've got quite a few people now living in very bad squats. These ones were a bit more established before and allowed, if you like, tolerated by the government. But now we've got people living in rat-ridden places and getting very sick, so not good. But at the moment, we have a mixture of people actually making it through and getting onto asylum. So quite a lot of people we're working with now actually want to be in France and want to seek asylum. And so that's, in some ways, we can sort of help them more because we can make friends with the authorities and all the other NGOs here and help them through the process. And we are seeing quite a few that immediately come, especially from Afghanistan, that come from their country here, having maybe been all over the place to get here and gone through the most horrendous journeys and risked their lives over and over to get here. But they don't arrive in a good place, but they do quite quickly get received into accommodation and €200 a month from the government while their asylum case is considered. And in that space now, we're being able to work with them to teach them the language, to just unpack the story a bit, become a family for them, give them meals and things. So that's been an interesting journey for us, because I'd say we've been able to go much deeper and maybe help a bit more. But then there are still many others that are here, and the country they've come from isn't on a list for immediate help. So they are, they're waiting, and their lives are on hold, if you like. That's harder but and they're in the squats often as well. So it's keeping an eye on their medical state and just and their emotional state, and just trying to support them.
So Priti, no, not at all. But what might a squat look like? What kind of buildings are being used, and what kind of facilities are in them? So I'm sure that Chrissy will be right back. Just having a few Wi-Fi issues. She said that there was a storm in Caen today, and it seems to be playing with her Wi-Fi. If you do have any questions that you'd like to put to Chrissy, then please add them in the comments. And also, if you just want to give Chrissy your support, Chrissy and Gerard and the team your support for the work that they're doing in Caen, then please do add comments and give them some encouragement. And hopefully we'll get Chrissy back shortly. do apologise for this. I see we've got some new people just joining. Your timing, unfortunately, we've just lost Chrissy, so hopefully we'll be getting her back in just a few moments. Please bear with us. And thank you for joining us today. I know it's a sunny Sunday afternoon, so I do appreciate your being here. Thank you, Basil. Oh, I hope we get Chrissy back. Let me just see if she's on Messenger. Thank you, Emily. They're an amazing team. I went to visit them in Caen a couple of years ago, and they're just such lovely, wonderful people, and they get so much joy from helping. So yes, I do completely agree. I'm so sorry that we've lost Chrissy, though. Just checking Messenger. She hasn't messaged me there, but hopefully she'll just be rejoining right now. I see we have more people joining. I do apologise, but we've temporarily lost Chrissy. She said that there was a storm in Caen today, and I think potentially it's knocked her Wi-Fi out for just a moment. So hopefully she'll be joining us very soon. Please bear with us. In the meantime, if you have any comments or questions that you want me to put to Chrissy, assuming she's able to rejoin at some point, then please do pop them into the comments box, and we'll be able to take a look at those, and I'll be able to ask Chrissy when she comes back on. Oh, here she is. Hopefully.
So sorry.
No problem at all, Chrissy. I see you've moved outside.
I have. I think it must be, we've got very weird weather here today. I'm wondering whether it's somehow affecting it. I don't know.
Don't worry at all. You were just explaining to us the conditions in the squats for people.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're pretty bad. They're warehouses. And if they're very clever, they can get themselves water, running water, but not always. Sometimes one toilet between many people. And they're pretty bad. I mean, you know, during the worst of the COVID stuff here, we've seen quite a few people get sick. So there are quite a few NGOs working alongside the government and trying to help. But one of our stories is we had one lad who got very sick in one and got taken into hospital, and the doctor phoned me to say, after they gave him an operation, tried to sort out his health, to say he can't possibly go back there. So actually he's living with us now, and he's thriving here, but years in that squat was just absolutely sapping him of his health. And it's the rats, actually. Sounds horrible, isn't it? It was true.
Really?
They're living with rats, and they're literally, he said he could feel them running up his arms at night and stuff. So so we've tried a little bit to get things like, we even tried to sort the squat out a little bit with a heater and a little stove and things like that, but you can't, they're just not clean places. They're not healthy places. So that's one of our worries about the boys in the squats and also just their emotional health, that they the long-term effect of living like that and living with so many people in a room, and they can't isolate, they can't. So it's just been a really tough season for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And do you have so you have people living in squats? Do you still have people in tents and camping?
Yeah, we got a few camping on the Presqu'île, from different countries, and through the winter, through the snow, through the ice. That was crazy, yeah. But I guess it's the same up in Calais and Dunkirk. We don't have anywhere near the numbers camping here, probably, that would up there. But except, I suppose, in Ouistreham and in the forest, there's a lot of Sudanese camping. But we don't have, because they're in a city, they can get access a bit more easily to things like The library is often open where they can get internet, and the toilets are there and things like that. It was a bit hard during the worst of the confinement time. It's tough because lots of places get locked up that they were using. But we now have a place in the city as well, so we can't have loads in, obviously, especially in confinement. But they come in and they're ones and twos, and we're thinking of getting a shower put in. We started some language lessons twice a week. We do them a hot meal twice a week. We give them things like hygiene packs, and we work hard on making sure in the winter our big priority was everybody should have a jacket and a pair of shoes, and at the very minimum. And Donate for Refugees helped us massively with making that happen. I've lost count of how many jackets we bought and how many shoes, and I'm sure most of the stores in Caen thought we were completely balmy going around picking up all the reductions, But yeah, so I guess it's harder probably up in Dunkirk and Calais for the campers because they really are isolated from that kind of help, whereas down here there is a bit more accessible in that sense. But there's still plenty of people who are pretty desperate and who've been living like this for far too long, and who are frightened and scared and alone in the world. And I like to think that one of the big things that we're trying to do at SOS is create a family for them and a place to listen to their stories. And we do it a lot by just having meals together, playing football, doing all the usual.
Well, that kind of leads me on to the work that SOS Chai does, because obviously you've mentioned the ambulance, you've mentioned a bit of clothes distribution, a bit of cooking, but what would sort of an average week, how would you support the communities that you're helping?
So an average week is Mondays and Wednesdays are sort of 2 assigned days, if you like, specifically for SOS, although the boys do drop in at other times, random times, to collect things or meet with us. So what started off just by the ambulance on the Presqu'île is now also a couple of hours in the afternoon that we are doing English and French lessons with small groups to help them with their language. Because obviously if you can't communicate, you can't even begin to sort things out. But also during those times, we've realised that's a good time for them to pop in and let us know the specific physical things that they are lacking, or just simple medical things, struggling with headaches, not sleeping, things like that we can try and help with a bit. And then in the evenings, we're doing a meal on the Presqu'île twice a week, which is a hot meal. We try to do something that's nutritious, something that's maybe even a little bit recognised by them and their cultures as well a bit, and give them lots of protein like boiled eggs and fruit, a hot wrap, different meals, things like fresh water, fruit, and they also love to, they were before confinement, obviously this last 18 months has been weird, but one of the things they love to do is sit and play a game of cards like Uno or something, or we taught them Uno, and but also dominoes, kick a football around. We have a drinks table where they can just hang out and have drinks and cakes and stuff like that as well. So that happens on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then outside of that, there's sometimes just following up things for boys or helping them with an appointment, or dropping in to pick up stuff that they've ordered from us, as they say, commandé. So
you're showing up because you don't have a dedicated centre. You're kind of showing up with the van, and they're coming to you. Yeah. And obviously, you've been doing that for quite a long time, so you're a familiar face to them. But they wouldn't come if they didn't need the help, and they wouldn't come if they didn't enjoy the company, and they wouldn't come if they'd do other things. So the quality of the services and the need for the services that you're providing, I think, is shown in the way that the guys gravitate towards you when you do arrive, and how much they enjoy what you provide for them.
Yeah. I mean, they are, they're a big part of our lives now, as I said earlier. And it's an amazing journey getting to know them and hearing so many different stories, and stories that sometimes it's hard to hear, and hard to believe, but they're very real. And I think for me as well, that the thing that comes through every time is the incredible strength. The ones that have made it up here are the strong ones that have really fought and maybe, tried to get down from Bosnia or Serbia or wherever they ended up, maybe 20 times, tried to climb in the back of a lorry and try to survive the journey. And I spoke to one boy once from Pakistan who told me that he he walked over these big mountains that were very icy. And when I stopped to work out what he meant the Alps, you know. And I said, you walked over the Alps. And he told me for 5 days he had nothing but the snow to drink. He just melted the snow in his hands and drank it. And that's how he stayed alive, you know. And
It's insane.
but he made it so matter of fact, you know, well, I just had to get over these mountains so that I could get somewhere and get out of the country. And I was just like, you mean the Alps?
Exactly.
And I could just imagine he was probably in his little pair of, you know, shoes, nothing. He wasn't equipped. And
No.
they're amazing, strong people, as you know. And
Yeah, I do.
and it's a, you know, it's a privilege. And I think what's exciting for us now is that we have a small group of them that are becoming leaders within SOS Chai and really helping us deliver what we deliver every week. You know, so there's 3 of them particularly that have really got very close to us, but there are others as well that are kind of love to muck in, love to help, love to be part of the answer for others, you know, love to give back. And it's great because one of those has come right through now, and he's got asylum in France for the next 5 years. And he's in Somalia, and he's doing so well, and got himself a lovely French girlfriend and getting work. And it's just so great to see him get a life, you know, after having fought so hard for so long. And they start, you know, I feel like more and more we're getting to hear the story behind them because they're trusting us with that as well. And
yes,
I can't, you know, it's a long way for them to really process what's happened. Obviously, that's a huge journey. I can't, you know, say that we are processing it much with them, but maybe at least by beginning to talk about it, they're feeling safe enough to do that. You know, they feel secure. They trust us to say what happened. And I feel like that's an amazing privilege as well. And, you know, hopefully bit by bit, that will help them as well believe that they've got a future here. And, you know, obviously for some of them, it's still going to be a long wait for asylum. But every time one gets his papers, you know, in our little community, the joy that breaks out with the others is just palpable, you know. Like,
I think it's happiness for that person, but it's also hope for themselves. Exactly. Because every person that gets their future a bit more secure is hope that of what might be happening next for them. And you mentioned before that a lot of the guys are now staying in France, but for the ones that do cross, you must get, you know, you meet them twice a week for maybe many months or many years, and you get to know them, and then all of a sudden one day they're gone. I mean, I know that we're always happy when somebody reaches the next stage of whatever it is that they want to do, but you must have a lot of sort of heartache when you go, oh, I miss that person.
And you know what, they're the happy ones in some ways, because we think, well, at least they've got to where they want to go. But then when we hear about the ones that are deported, that's really hard, you know, because we know they've been sent back to countries that aren't safe. And or, you know, for them, it's a real shame in the fact that they haven't made it. And so that's tough too, you know. But we had a lovely time on the Presqu'île once, when on the middle of one of our Wednesday evenings, we was just kicking a ball around, having fun and having a meal. And then one of our team got phoned on WhatsApp, and he answered it. It was Harry, I think it was called Harry, and he got to England. He was like, "Hi, I'm in England."
Oh, it doesn't. It's an insane time in our lives for all of for history. I think that people are being forced into these journeys, and over the past year, obviously the world has been turned upside down by COVID, and you mentioned it briefly earlier. And you've also had Jared's been quite sick this year, which I'm really sorry about, and I hope he's getting better now soon. So what's kind of been different for you this year?
Oh, everything, really.
Everything.
I think the biggest challenges are, you know, we've got this centre now in Caen, and we just haven't been able to invite them in because, well, from time to time, and then we've had to shut it for a season, and then we open again. That's hard because you can't get the continuity going. And then there's things like, we've got permission to feed the boys outside of the what's the English word? Couvre-feu. I can't think of the English word anymore. It's like everybody has to be inside by 7 o'clock in the evening. You know,
the curfew.
Curfew. Sorry, that's it. So they have to. You know, technically, the refugees are kind of left alone in that the police don't even bother trying to find them because they ain't got any money anyway. But we have permission to have it be outside and do that with them. So we've carried on. But a lot of the team are scared. They're really fearful of just being out. And even though I've got all the paperwork and everything, people are nervous. there's a kind of strange atmosphere. So sometimes it's been tough keeping going, just enough of us to keep going sometimes. And then also, I think for the boys, they're just apprehensive. They don't know what's coming towards them. They hear the worst on the news, and they don't have any of, we try and give them masks and all the rest of it, but they don't have a lot of healthcare. Although I loved, I laughed with one African boy who said to me, "Oh, we're as strong as oxes. We survived everything. Oh, we've got better resilience than you guys," kind of thing, living in your sterile homes. I thought, well, that's true, yeah, probably. But at the same time, it's been a risky season and a hard season for them and a fearful season. But we tried to keep going, and we have kept going pretty much. We had to stop at one point for a few months. I think there'll be a great relief when we come out of this, and that we can really, it feels like sometimes you're just getting going and then you have to stop for a season because the rules have all changed, and then trying to get going again. And I do worry for them when it started to break out in the squats, that we'd heard there were groups of boys getting sick, and then it was worrying. That's scary for them, because they can't change their circumstances. So that's tough.
But they got better?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't heard any awful stories. I haven't heard, we never quite know because you don't hear everything. But I think I haven't heard anything awful. And I think on the whole, the hospitals here have been really good. We've got a free hospital here for the boys, and free medical care. So I think on the whole, and it feels like there's some really good doctors and nurses, and they're fighting for them. So I think they've had the care that they've needed. That's the ones that are registered here, and that's the one I'm talking about. The boys now that are, the ones that are living more in the tents and on the streets. I think it's probably been tough for them. Fortunately, I haven't heard of them getting sick, so they seem to have been done okay. So I guess they don't go many places. They don't see people. They just kind of live in their own little communities. So they seem fairly, they seem to have stayed healthy, which is good from what I know.
Very much so. And I guess some people are asymptomatic as well. So even if they caught COVID, they may not show any symptoms. But long may it continue. Yep. Exactly. No, that's been amazing. I think I'm just going to check. I don't think that we've got any questions from the audience today. So we have got a couple of lovely comments that I put on the screen whilst you disappeared. But such great work. Always love seeing the updates of SOS Chai from Emily. And thank you for the humanity from Basil. And he's got a follow-up question that I need to respond to. So I'll do that offline. Do you have any final words for maybe the people at home, or anything really that you'd like to sort of share or say as some final words?
Well, I think my journey with the boys has been that, you start off a little bit nervous to have those conversations, to kind of wade in and know how to build relationships with people across language barriers, a lot of cultural barriers, across so many crazy barriers. But it's so worth it, and the more I get to know them, the more I get involved in their lives, the more I realize it's such a rich experience. And I get heartbroken when I read news articles and stuff about them. Sometimes they're so badly portrayed, even in this area, as carrying guns or knives and stuff like this. It's not true, and the ones I've got to know, I know a lot of them. They're amazing people, amazing survivors, and so sweet. And there was a time when we were really busy, and I had a lot of boys around me, often hanging out on the Prescue, which isn't the safest area often, and people used to say, "Do you not feel safe as a woman on your own?" And I say, I feel so safe with these boys. They are so respectful, and so it's just incredible human beings. And so just encourage people really to reach out, wherever they are. I mean, there's refugees all over the place at the moment, and they deserve our love and care and respect. And we can do a lot just by showing up and being noticing them and treating them with the respect that they deserve. I haven't got the answers half the time to their questions, but that shouldn't stop us getting involved. And I think it does often. I think we're often fearful of getting involved, or fearful of being overwhelmed, or fearful of not having the answers. And we just got to get beyond that and get stuck in.
I completely agree. That. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. I host with. I'm a host of refugees here, so we have them living with us, and it just means that we've got the most wonderful extended family.
Yeah.
And just the most, you know, they're often thanking me for what I've done for them, and it's like, no, you don't understand how much you've done for me just by being in my life and by being part of the journey that I'm going on as well. But they're just, yeah, like you said, we just need to open our hearts and show a bit of kindness.
We really
and I
do.
think I think it's a really sad rhetoric that our governments are throwing at us. I feel it in France, and I feel it in the UK, and I feel it across Europe, and I don't feel it in society and in citizens. And I don't understand why the governments are so certain about being showing animosity and showing all of this hatred towards refugees and suspicion towards them, when I don't see it in people around me at all.
No. And I think if we could only change that culture, what a difference it would make. I often look at the ones that we're hanging out with and think these are future leaders, you know. I mean, you know, you hear these incredible stories of governmental leaders and makers all over the world who started life as a refugee, but because they're survivors, they're strong, and they grow, and they're ambitious. That's what keeps them going, you know, to be change makers themselves. So yeah,
it's true. Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today, Chrissy. Thanks so much for your time and for sharing what you've been up to. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time on the 23rd of May, when we'll be talking to Jess Nichols, who's co-founder of Project Almonia in Samos. But for now, for everybody that was listening at home as well, thank you very much to Chrissy. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.